I'm Julia Angwin, founder of Proof News. I'm here with Annie Gilbertson, who wrote the story about this app that is using therapy sessions to train AI. Annie is taking over as managing editor at Proof News and is here to talk about not just this story, but what we have in store for you at Proof News this year.
Hi, Julia.
Hi. So let's start with the shocker. What is going on with an app that is collecting therapy sessions and using those to train AI?
Yeah, let me give you a little bit of background about this app. You may have heard of Talkspace. It's one of the really big telehealth apps, and they have deals with major insurance providers across the country. They've also got deals with employers and schools. There's programs for military families, senior citizens. So we're talking about an eligible patient network of like 200 million people, the company says. And we had really gotten interested in Talkspace when we had heard about privacy concerns in a New York City teen program. And I started looking around, seeing what I could find about the company, and came across a lawsuit.
So, this lawsuit was a case where a nurse was alleging employment discrimination. And what she found in court was her therapy records being used against her. How did this happen?
Right. So as any good investigative reporter does, you always do a court record search, and I find this deposition from a Talkspace therapist. And at first, I'm thinking like, here's a little window into how this company works. Let's see what kind of information I can glean. And in that deposition, it became clear that part of the case had become one of the pieces of evidence was her actual chats with her therapist, and they were quoting these chats in the deposition. I was like, this is so interesting. And it turns out that the her entire chat history with her therapist, which is a lot about how Talkspace works, like you can do audio and video visits, but you can also do asynchronous texting with your therapist, and that's was the big innovation that Talkspace did when it first launched about a decade ago. And all her chats had been subpoenaed and brought into the court case. The backstory of this court case is it was a nurse who had been nearly 9 months pregnant, and then she lost her job. So she sues for pregnancy discrimination and brought in her therapy records or brought in her therapist as a witness. And as part of the defense strategy, the defense subpoenaed a litany of her Talkspace records, and they all ended up in court.
That is absolutely my worst nightmare. I Now Talkspace has said that they are amassing a huge database of all of these therapy sessions to build an AI. Tell us about this and how come this isn't known, or is it known by the people who are using this app?
Look, I think Talkspace would say that they disclose in their privacy policy and how they use data, that they're using your data to build new products and storing your audio, video, and text messages. And but the CEO really talks about this when he's talking to investors, which of course we combed through years of investor records for this story. And when he talks about it, he really talks about this as being just this gigantic asset, one of the largest mental health data banks in the world, with over 140 million text message exchanges. And then the whole goal is using this mental health data bank and including notes about progress notes about patients to build an AI therapy companion bot that the company has told investors that they're going to release this year. So, as you know, Julia, AI takes a lot of training data, and Talkspace has really emphasized that we have a very unique data set because we've been recording and storing all of our patient interactions. To investors, the CEO is often emphasizing that they are compliant with HIPAA and they anonymize data before it's going into train AI, and that and they really emphasize that they do what they can to protect patient data. But here, of course, is an example of the data coming out nevertheless.
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing that's worth pointing out is that maybe people don't know, but therapists do take notes sometimes during sessions and they do take little notes afterwards. But in their minds, because the confidentiality is such a huge part of the practice, they don't usually put like either there's no transcript usually, right? It's much more like a summary. And so even if they get a court order, they wouldn't have this to turn over. So really the risk here is that there is an existing transcript that didn't used to exist. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, I think, having talked to other psychologists and professionals in the industry, that, they'll take like an after patient visit, like a few notes, progress notes, and that would really be the bulk of what information is kept about the private thoughts that were shared in a therapy session. And these notes are maybe a few sentences. And of course, those could be subpoenaed and brought into court. But I mean, it's nothing like the word for word interactions over sessions over months and years, and that data being collected. I mean, it's a totally different ballgame.
Yeah, and I think that's one thing to think about, right? Which is like AI is generally two things at once. One, it's like vacuum, right? It's vacuuming up all this information, right? But it's also like this incredible surveillance tool because it's also true that like this wasn't surveillable information in the past, right? And so as it vacuums and then it's really good AI at sorting through, right? We've seen this with cameras, with where a human would have to look through hours and hours of footage, AI can sort through and find patterns and et cetera. So it actually supercharges surveillance. And we're seeing this across so many things. So I'm wondering if you want to talk like just broadly about like what AI is doing in
Yeah,
workplaces.
I think a lot of people, when they think about AI, they think about the chatbots and it being able to generate conversations and your emails and images and video, and they're not necessarily thinking about its capabilities through surveillance. But really, what's happened in the last decade, and even before, is that we've just set up so many systems in which our data is constantly being collected, either by the government through cameras at intersections or by private companies who are collecting information about us as we go about our work and daily lives in the digital world. And what happens is that AI is now able to look for patterns and to bring information together in a way that we couldn't have ever imagined before AI. Because going through, let's say, like surveillance footage across the city of San Francisco over 30 days, looking for somebody with a red backpack, imagine the man hours that would have taken in the previous world. AI can do that in seconds and look for a backpack in all of that footage. So really, it's a totally new ballgame with surveillance, and it's something I'm really interested in covering at Proof. Is this other avenue in which AI is changing lives?
Yeah, so let's talk about Proof. So you joined Proof as a reporter when I founded it 2 years ago. You worked for me, my previous startup, The Markup, and now you're taking over as managing editor. You're going to lead a year's worth of reporting now on AI and labor. So talk about first of all, what it's like to go from reporter to editor, and secondly, like this avenue of reporting and what excites you about it.
I mean, there's a lot to say there. I think, what's it like going from reporter to editor? I mean, I imagine that it's just like a way to increase your influence, right? As an editor, you're helping shape stories for many people, not just your own stories. And so it's like a really interesting new point of view to take. Um, and luckily, I've been an investigative reporter for a while, that I think I can help reporters sort of like think about their next steps and how to approach their stories. And I'm really interested in this topic of AI and labor because, look, I'm a truth to power kind of girly, and I really think that we're seeing so much concentration of power in these AI frontier labs, and I don't know that the coverage is always getting at how this is affecting real people. And this is a way in which we can talk to people that are actually on the ground instead of focusing on the people at the tops of these companies and, the policy debates and really like the hypothetical things that could happen down the road. I think a lot of coverage is about like, what does the future hold, which is just completely unknowable. We're so much more interested in being able to document exactly how it's unfolding in real people's lives right now.
Yeah, I mean, so much AI coverage is speculative, right? Like the debate, is AI going to take everyone's job, right? Talkspace is such a perfect example of this, right? It's not currently taking the therapist's job, but it is changing their job, right? All of a sudden, they're dealing with this fact that there's this app intermediating between them and the client, which creates a transcript, which is a confidentiality risk. And also, it threatens to take their job because the company's trying to build an AI that, in theory, would, I guess, help or replace therapists. I'm not sure what they imagine for it, but talk about what are the on the ground, like what is that specific risk in this case?
Right. Um, Look, Talkspace has said that they are trying to actually get insurance reimbursement for the services that are going to be provided by this AI chatbot. That's something that they're thinking about down the road. So it is easy to see potential scenario where people are turning to AI chat instead of a human therapist. And that does have many therapists worried about a threat to their profession and about like the quality of care to patients. I will say that there is like a debate amongst therapists and mental health professionals around this. Some people really just don't see AI as being able to do their job ever, right? Just like in the same way that us as journalists are like, how is AI going to, call people and get them to tell them things, right? So they don't see it. Some people don't see it as a direct threat and see it as like, in the same way, going for a walk or reading a self-help book can also help you. Maybe this will help augment what you're doing in therapy. But there are certainly labor groups who are very, very worried about AI supplanting their work or being used by their employers to push for ever more sort of efficiencies and more labor quickly. So it is definitely a debate.
Yeah, and I think what I loved about this story though was the fact that it nods to the debate, but it's really about the actual thing right now. Because the actual thing right now is the creation of a transcript does change the relationship, right? If I go when I go to the doctor, they're always asking me if the AI can transcribe while we're meeting, and I feel bad. I do want to help the doctor. I know that that's a hard life. They have to write all these notes and this and that, but it's exactly this scenario that I'm worried about, right? Like once you start creating these transcripts, like you just don't know what's going to happen to them. And ultimately, no matter what protections people promise, we have lived in a world of data breaches and hacks and all the rest for so long that any kind of assurance kind of feels thin. And so I wanted to talk about like sort of generally like the way that we're doing this reporting this year is so interesting to me because, as you and I know, we both have been really working in the space of data journal. Like a lot of the work we did at Markup and at Proof has been data journalism. And what's interesting is this year we're going fully like uh back old school. This is just like boots on the ground reporting. And it's interesting because it feels to me like that's the only way to tell this story, right? The only way to tell this story is to actually talk to the people whose lives are being changed right now about through AI. Like AI is changing their work. Tell me a little bit about the reporting and how what we're doing this year, what it's going to look like, what kind of reporting is involved.
Yeah, I think you summed it up accurately. Look, we're just going to talk to real people who are on the ground and really avoid sort of the speculative hype. And um, we're talking to people like officers who we're seeing a rollout of AI applications in all facets of government here. So we're talking about education, law enforcement, government benefit programs like SNAP. All of these areas of the government are experimenting with AI tools to help potentially bring efficiencies, but also could potentially bring problems or not deliver the efficiencies promised. So we're talking to those workers about how they're seeing them roll out in their workplaces. And also healthcare is obviously huge. I mean, there's just so much investment in AI helping sort of bring efficiencies to healthcare. And we're really interested in how that's impacting workers and of course patients. And I will say that like it's a unique way to approach this because I think a lot of news media focuses on the big players here. They're talking about Google and Anthropic and OpenAI, of course. and what these models and each new model release is capable of doing, and how it expands the technology. And we're really focused on sort of like the boots on the ground applications of artificial intelligence. And a lot of times those softwares are not being built by those frontier labs. They're being built by other types of tech companies that just are not getting coverage. So I think it's a really unique way to approach this beat.
Yeah, you and I have this funny saying, right? Like that a lot of the AI coverage is personality, which is like, the dudes
Yeah.
who run it. Product, which is like, oh, new version of Gemini is out. Is it good? Is it bad? Right? And policy, which is like, should we pass a law to do X or Y? And not that any of those things aren't important, but like we're just focusing on another P, which is people, right?
Mm-hmm.
What is happening right now to people who have to use AI? Because it's unavoidable, right? You cannot, at this point in time, avoid AI. It literally pops up while you're trying to write something in Google Docs, right? Like it's
Yeah.
in your Google search results. It's everywhere in life. And so everyone is encountering it. And that's the story that we're trying to figure out. Like, what does that mean? What's happening? Where is that taking place?
Yeah, exactly, Julia. It's like you and I have joked. It's AI is like corn syrup. It's in everything. It's in unexpected things, and we that's how we're approaching it. Yeah,
Yeah. And I want to point out sugar is better than corn syrup.
yeah. People are willing to pay a premium to find that real sugar Coca Cola, right?
That's right. So we are hoping people will pay a premium to get our real sugar reporting, which is real people reported on by real people. Annie, tell me if you have questions for me.
So I've known you for a few years. We started at the markup together, and you mentioned this that we're really trying to do something almost the opposite here. Do you want to expand on that a little bit? Like what do you see as the difference between what Proof News and the markup and are in terms of their mission?
Well, the thing about the markup was that I was really trying an experiment there. I had been working in newsrooms, the Wall Street Journal, ProPublica, where there was a data desk and it served the whole newsroom. And it was kind of like the DMV. You went and you like asked for data and then they handed it out the window to you. And it was always really difficult. There's like a long line, kind of like the DMV. Everybody wants access to the data team. And I was really of the belief that we have to infuse sort of all of our stories with data and that data reporting should be like core to our work. And so the markup newsroom was this experiment in putting every journalist paired with a data journalist and seeing how did that supercharge the work. And I would say that it was very successful. I think we supercharged the work. All of the work was elevated by that. And the way I see it, and this is obviously biased, but I feel like we were such a success that that has actually infused like a lot of newsrooms, and a lot of the markup alumni are all around in great newsrooms doing this type of work, and that data is now really not seen as a separate piece. Everyone is trying to do data reporting. Proof is an interesting other experiment. Proof is more about my question about why no one trusts media, right? There's just no question that there's no trust in media. And so the question I had with Proof was, what would it take to rebuild trust? So what we did, we started with the experiment we have on our stories, the ingredients label, like what is in this story? What are the ingredients of it? And so the idea was to really help people understand what led us to these conclusions and let them make that decision about whether they trusted the work based on the actual ingredients like of the work, just like you would look at the ingredients label on food. And the thing that's interesting about this moment is that I think what we need in that ingredients label is humans. Because the real thing is, if you want to know how humans are being affected by AI, you have to talk to humans. So the ingredients need to include humans. And like, so it's not that I love data reporting, always will, always have been. But for this particular question, I believe that the proof requires a different kind of reporting. And I think it's actually something really special because everyone in the AI reporting era is like writing about the competition between the big companies, which is super interesting. And that's a great business story. But the story that I think people resonate with is the one that they experience themselves, which is AI is affecting my life and I don't see any coverage of it, right? And so I'm hoping we can answer that question, and I also hope our ingredients label resonates with people.
Hmm. So I think this is a fun last question to end interviews on, but is AI coming for our jobs, Julia?
I mean, AI is definitely trying to take our jobs for sure. Every journalism conference I go to, there are 3,000 different panels on AI and a lot of tech companies sponsoring with like how to use AI in your newsroom, etc. And the truth is, we use AI, right? Both you and I, Annie, use AI. It's a useful tool for sorting large data sets, summarizing kind of back end research tasks, right? But the people who are promoting AI as like content creation, right? That it would write the stories or uh, create the videos. I mean, I'm not on board with that. And I think there will be newsrooms that will go that direction for sure. And definitely some have already started trying. I think there's a newsroom today that's on some sort of byline strike about the use of AI in their newsroom. And so this is constantly happening, this tension. But I just think that in the end, humans, just like sugar and corn syrup, people want the sugar. And like, I do think there's still going to always be a market for humans telling other humans what's happening in the world. Thank you so much, Annie. This is fantastic.
Yeah, thanks, Julia. Caitlin Watson, the CMO of Talkspace, reached out after our article was first published. She said in an email, Talkspace never provides transcripts for anything ever, including in the camera's case. The distinction is that another party provided those records, not the corporate office.